Here we are back with IronmanHacks. How you like that? It's not breakfast with Bob.
Nice. Way to go.
Thank you, Mo Tregu, coming all the way from the Cook Islands. Maybe that's why your face is a bit blurry. I guess that undersea cable is really long. But yeah, he's no poncho man, but he's got his own style. And thank you, Bob. Thank you for joining us today on IronmanHacks. We're honored to be here with you or have you here with us. And for once, you're being the one that's getting interviewed, not you doing the interviewing.
Before we get into this video, I want to let you know I got a whole series coming out with Bob Babbitt. He's got some ridiculous stories, some amazing stories. You can't miss these. So in order to stay up to date, please subscribe and like and leave a comment. Some people that left comments on the last video are people like Frank JO2, Neil Try, Bryce Madsen, Jonathan Coyle, and even Mark Allen. So leave a comment and I may just give you a shout out. But first you gotta subscribe, stay tuned. We got some awesome content coming up with Bob Babbitt in future videos and in this video. Plus I got playlists of other awesome people like Mark Allen, Dave Scott, Craig Alexander, Tim Reed, Rudy Von Berg, Dan Emfield, and I'm gonna keep them coming if you keep on subscribing and you keep on commenting. All right, let's get into it.
I heard you were just off a long weekend. You raised a bit of money. What was that about?
It was pretty special. It was 28th anniversary of what started out for Challenge Athletes Foundation as our San Diego Triathlon Challenge. And that goes back to a gentleman by the name of Jim McLaren, was a 300-pound football player at Yale. And in 1985, he was taking acting classes in New York City, was on his motorcycle. He got hit by a bus, was thrown 90 feet in the air, dead on arrival, lived, and lost his lower left leg from the crash. Ended up running a 3:16 marathon with a walking leg and going 10:42 in Kona to finish top 20% of it in the race as an amputee. And this is late 80s, early 90s, when we're talking the prosthetics weren't like what you see nowadays. There was no carbon fiber. There was no graphite. There was basically wood. And I had a magazine called Competitor Magazine. So I was covering Jimmy at the time. And he was traveling the world, and everybody knew who he was. He was sponsored by big brands. And then 8 years later, he was doing a race in Orange County, California. A van went through a closed intersection, hit the back of his bike, propelled him headfirst into a pole. He became a quadriplegic. He was already an amputee, became a quad. And that's when three buddies, myself and two close friends, got together to put on a little triathlon to raise 25 grand for Jimmy to buy a van with hand controls. From competitor, I'd covered a lot of wheelchair athletes. And the one thing when I'd ask them, what's the worst part about being paralyzed? It was invariably, I'm 30 years old. Here come mom and dad back in my life. No sense of self, no sense of independence. So we thought a van with hand controls would give Jimmy independence. And so that first year we raised $49,000. And we thought our job was done, buy Jimmy the van and we'd move on with our lives. And then we had a number of amputee women come up to us after the event and said, listen, it's great we did for Jimmy, but did you know when you get injured, your health insurance will cover a walking around leg or an everyday wheelchair? Nothing to do with sport is covered because sport is considered a luxury item. And everybody on this call knows that sport's a huge part of who we are and what we do, and it's not a luxury item. So we became an official charity and started Challenge Athletes Foundation. And now we've raised, after just raising $3.5 million over the last week, we're over $138 million raised in 28 years and sent out over 35,000 grants to athletes in 73 countries, all 50 states. And the most important part, 105 different sports. Who knew there was 105 different sports that people needed equipment, coaching, travel, et cetera. And so it's been a great journey. And this last week, we had our $1 Million Challenge bike ride that started in San Francisco, 640 miles, 7 days. That event raised $2.3 million. And then our triathlon raised $1.1 million. That was on Saturday. We had Sam Long there, along with Laura Siddall, 3-time Ironman Australia champion, and Michellie Jones, Olympic silver medalist and Ironman world champion. And more importantly, probably the only person on the planet to have a a Paralympic medal, and she also has a Paralympic gold for guiding Katie Kelly from Australia to the first ever gold medal in the first ever Paralympic triathlon in 2016 in Rio, and they got a gold medal with Michellie leading her. So all those athletes have been amazing in their support of CAF. Michellie was with us at our first ever San Diego Triathlon Challenge. So it's been a great journey, and that's a huge part of really of my life is watching what our athletes accomplish.
That's so fabulous. That's so amazing. I mean, those are some huge numbers, I guess. And I cannot imagine what it would be like if, you know, a disability or an accident or anything like that took away what I loved. And I'm sure everybody else feels the same. And that's why you do this. It's just really, really amazing. And I think people love what you're doing, Bob. I know it. And so thanks for all your great work.
Yeah, we love it. It's the best.
And I was really, really intrigued. As I said, Bob, it's something that I follow on Instagram, and, you know, we're all encompassed in triathlon as a sport and what we can achieve. But then when you just mentioned something about a 3:16 marathon, I mean, that's, you know, I mean, we think of a 3:16 marathon, certainly age groupers anyway, as, you know, that's a real tough ask at the end of the day. But then to do it in those circumstances, that takes that person to a whole different level.
Absolutely. And that's a thing that people don't quite understand. With two of the athletes we honored this weekend, Kendall Gretsch is an American, and she has cerebral palsy. And then we had Lauren Parker from Australia. She was an age group athlete. She was a top age group triathlete on stage with us in 2015 in Kona. She got a silver in the 25 to 29 age division. That was 2015. 2016, she went pro as a triathlete. And then in 2017, she was getting ready for her first ever Ironman as a pro, Ironman Australia. On April 17th of that year, 2017, she was on a training ride just a couple of weeks before the race, and both tires flatted, went into a guardrail, paralyzed from the waist down. And I had her on my show in July of 2017. And she said, Bob, I want to stay in triathlon. How can I stay in triathlon? I'm like, well, that starts with being at the San Diego Triathlon Challenge weekend. So she checked herself out of the hospital, said, oh, I'm going home for the weekend. And we flew her to San Diego from Australia for the weekend. And, you know, I think she thought she was going to be like the only person with a disability there. And she sees 250 other people and a lot of kids with big smiles on their face who are missing 2, 3, and 4 limbs sometimes, or they're in a wheelchair. And at what we call our Celebration of Abilities dinner, I was emceeing, and I brought attention to this young woman who just checked herself out of the hospital to come to San Diego to find out if she could still be an athlete. And the crowd just simultaneously stood up and gave her a standing ovation. And we got her a hand cycle and a racing chair. And within a year of her injury, she took a bronze at the Commonwealth Games in paratriathlon. The next year in 2019, she won the World Championships. And 2021, she got the silver at the paratriathlon at the Paralympics. And she was beaten by this woman, Kendall Gretsch, by 1 second, less than a second. Wow. Kendall caught her right at the line. And as I told Lauren, you know, you hate to lose a race like that, but thinking back to Julie Moss and Kathleen McCartney, thinking back to classic races, Dave Scott and Mark Allen, sometimes you need a race like that. Races like that become immortal. That's something that will live on forever. And as bummed as Lauren was to get past the line, we honored them and showed that video up on the big screen on Friday night and again on Saturday. And the crowd went absolutely crazy. And it was, as Lauren said herself, I won the silver medal. I didn't lose the gold. And that's the attitude you had to have. And Sunday, Michellie Jones, who lost the gold medal in the first ever Olympic triathlon, she won the silver medal and embraced it. Even though the woman who beat her a couple years later went positive for drugs, Michellie was never, well, I should get the gold medal because she went positive. Her mentality was always, I'm proud of what I did. I know what I did to get ready for that race. I got the silver medal. I won the silver medal. And seeing her with Lauren, and actually our team for that race was Michellie Jones doing the swim, and Lauren Parker doing the bike ride. And the run was Laura Siddall, the 3-time Ironman Australia champion. So that was a pretty cool relay team, all of them connected to Australia, even though Laura Siddall's not Australian. And just the 3 of them together was really special to see.
I mean, that's truly incredible. I'll just jump in quickly, Andrew. I mean, we have a lady in our team called Claire Danson, yes. and you may know the name, and she's incredible. And one thing that amazes me about Claire is that I'm a mindset coach for triathletes, and so this is something I work with amateurs and pros, age groupers and pros on a daily basis, all around mindset for triathlon. Yet when I speak to Claire, she's a whole new different level. You know, I don't want to talk about adversity, about difficult turbo rides, and I've got a difficult run later and things like that, because then she comes on and she's off to the track and I just think, how can I talk about that when she's going to the track and all of the things that she's going through on a day-to-day basis? It's very humbling, but incredible stories.
One of my favorite stories when I was still doing competitor radio. This is back in the 90s. One of our athletes is Rudy Garcia-Tolson, our CF athlete. He's a double above knee amputee. He was told he would never walk, and he's made 5 Paralympic teams in swimming. He's won 2 golds, 2 silvers, and a bronze, 232 for 200 IM, all right, with no legs. Figure that out. He's run a sub 6-minute mile, and he was the first double above knee amputee to finish an Ironman at Ironman Arizona. And when he rides, he doesn't have hamstrings or quads. He rides a regular bike using his glutes only. And so being aero means nothing to him. He has to be on the hot bars and use his arms along the way. So anyways, I had him on, and I also had a runner from University of Oregon on the same show. And it was Acosta, not Andre Acosta, I don't remember his name. But anyways, so we're in studio, and Andre Acosta's in there. And he's run a 3:53 mile. And I had set him up to do his first triathlon. He did the Solana Beach Triathlon, and Rudy did it. And so AJ Acosta. So I said to AJ, so AJ, what'd you think of the triathlon? He says, well, I didn't have a problem with the swim. I was fine with that. But during a run, I got a blister. I had a really, really bad blister. And I said, Rudy, how'd your race go? Oh, my leg came off 3 times. And I'm like, hey, Andre, AJ, moving forward. A little bit of not really that big a deal. Okay, this guy's leg came off 3 times. All right, don't be bitching about some blister.
And that's like a guy in Singapore I know who's got one leg. You guys might know him here, Sharif, Blade Runner, and he has a shirt, or I think it's a shirt. It says, "What's your excuse?"
Exactly. Well, and like Hunter Woodhall, who is a double below knee amputee from birth. He was ranked number 1 in high school in the quarter mile in Utah, the state of Utah. And then, and he was ranked top 20 in the country. And I went to see him at a high school meet during his senior year of high school. And he wins he runs, at that point, he was running 46 seconds for a quarter, right? So he runs 46 for the quarter and wins a quarter. And then he's in the 4x100 relay. And I see all this commotion around him in the infield. So I go down to the infield, see what's going on. And a bolt had come out of his leg. So they pulled out duct tape. I don't know if they call it duct tape in other parts of the world, but basically tape you'd use when things fall apart. They duct taped his leg back on, and then he anchored the 4x100 to win that. So and then Hunter became, at that point, even though he'd run so well, he had no scholarship offers for college. So after I had him on the show and he told me he had no offers for college, we got him into a meet in New York, this high school meet, and New York Times newspaper wrote an article about why this kid doesn't have any offers. He's top 20 in the country. Next thing you know, he has 5 scholarship offers from all over the country.
Wow.
Goes to Arkansas. He took a bronze and a silver in 2016. He just took a bronze in Tokyo as well in the 400. And he's one of the most followed people on social media. He and his girlfriend, Tara Davis, have, I think it's upwards of 400,000 on Instagram. They were just on this. The Ellen DeGeneres has a big show here in the U.S. And they were just on they just got engaged. That would ended up being in People magazine. And then for their honeymoon, Ellen gave them 7 nights in St. Croix, all expenses paid,
Wow.
They have a huge following. Both of them are here for our big weekend, and they've been posting a ton about what's happening. But that's the deal. So this kid gets a scholarship to college, and now he's going to be successful, not just in sport, but in business.
Right. That's incredible. Really
Amazing.
Incredible.
Thank you for that. I'll just quickly introduce two guys who joined Idham. I've known him since my very first triathlon here in Singapore. And Dan, who's from Ireland, but he's also in Singapore. You guys want to say hi to Bob for a second?
Sure. Good morning, Bob. I joined what a great conversation you were having about the spirit of the human mind and body with people. I'm really excited to be on this call. So just started my triathlon adventure, joining Andrew and the team in Singapore, and just really keen to hear all your stories when I look back at your career in triathlon from the very genesis of it. So very nice to meet you this morning.
A pleasure to meet you as well. And so you're from Ireland?
I'm from Ireland. Been in Singapore the last year, and when I arrived in Singapore, I decided to the lockdown and all the pandemic around the world hadn't been very favorable to any of us, so I decided to get into triathlon.
One of my favorite athletes from when we were covering running with competitor was Eamon Coughlin, and Eamon loved San Diego, and he'd come out here every year for our different events, and he'd run. We used to have this indoor track meet called the Jack in the Box track meet, and Eamon we called him the chairman of the boards. He loved running indoors, and I think he is the first guy to break 350 for the mile indoors.
That's right.
Total legend. And the sports arena here in San Diego is where they held that meet, and the son of the guy who owns the sports arena still has the boards underneath the sports arena. The track, they haven't run track there in 20 years, but they still have the boards from when Eamon won set the sub 350 mile. That was considered one of the top 50 sports achievements in San Diego in our history, was Eamon going sub 350 for the mile.
Yeah. A real national treasure, Eamon Coughlin. Yeah, what a great memory. And you were you there? Were you there for that?
I was there for that. Yeah. When I had Eamon on the show, I said, Eamon, where do you live? He goes, I live in the fastest growing city in the world. I said, what do you mean? He said, I live in Dublin. We double every day.
Great stuff.